everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you my February wrap-up. So, February. If you have watched any of my recent reads videos for this month, then you know that February was not the ideal reading month for me. I had a lot going on, there was a lot of outside factors, and I also have just been quite slumpy. And you'll know if you've been watching my channel for a while, that's pretty rare for me. I very rarely, well, I would say I never get into the typical reading slump, but I have definitely been somewhat slumpy this month. With all of the outside factors, I just haven't felt like reading as much. I just haven't been like in a good headspace for reading. And so I just haven't been as drawn to reading this month as what I typically am. Fingers crossed that can pick up in March, but in February, there wasn't a lot of it happening. So let's jump into my statistics for the books that I did read in February. So I managed to read a total of, I'm sorry if you can hear background noise. I'm filming this not on a weekend like I usually do because the month didn't end until the weekend. Anyway, I'm filming this on a weeknight, and that means the cats are a little bit more hyper than they usually would be. And that is Winifred wrestling around in the laundry. Okay, so I read a total of 9 books. That was made up of 8 novels and 1 novella. So that's right, 9. That has to be the lowest number of books that I have read in a month in, I don't even know, a very long time. So the 9 books were made up of 3 physical copies, 2 ebooks, and 4 audiobooks. Excluding audiobooks, I read 4 books that I own and 1 from the library. I read a total of 5,015 pages, which averaged out to 173 pages per day. So I, a long time ago, had like an aim to kind of get my pages per day up, average like for a month, to around 200 pages per day. And this is the first time in a really long time that my average has dropped below 200. But I did still read over 5,000 pages because even though I only read 9 books, and I definitely, no matter what, was not reading as much as I normally would, the books that I was reading were quite chunky. A lot of the books I read this month were chunky books. So the shortest book that I read was 128 pages. That was the novella that I read. And the longest book that I read was 587 pages. That's the longest book that I completed. I actually read more pages than that of another book, but I didn't complete that book in the month. So stay tuned to possibly see that in my March statistics. The lowest star rating that I gave was, I did give a 2-star rating in February, and the highest star rating that I gave was, I did technically give a 5-star, but that was a reread. So the highest new to me book that I read that I gave the highest rating to was a 4.25 star. My average star rating for the month, funnily enough, averaged out to 3.72, which is way higher than my average star ratings usually are, which is interesting. So I read less, but my average star rating was a lot higher. So maybe there's something to be said in that. So I also want to touch on my least favorite book of the month and my most favorite book of the month. So my least favorite book of the month was Chosen by Kiersten White. This is the one that I gave 2 stars. This is the second book in the Slayer series by Kiersten White. The book's set in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe. I didn't think that it did a great job with that universe, despite the fact that I can tell from it that Kiersten White is a fan. It just really didn't work for me. My best book of the month was, in fact, the novella that I read, which was The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. This is book 1.5 in the, I'm not sure what the series is called. Is it just the Gentleman's Guide series? It's the novella that's set after the Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue and before the events of the Lady's Guide to Pirates and Petticoats and Pirates, whatever. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. Very, like I said, it was 128 pages. I listened to it on audio. Very easy listen, really enjoyable. I laughed out loud listening to it. Highly recommend. Especially if you have read the other books in the series, or even just the first one, because it is kind of set around the main characters from the first book in particular. If you can get your hands on a copy, I would suggest picking it up because it was a really good time. So now, to check in on my TBR from February, obviously, the month that we're talking about, to check in from my TBR from February and to see how I did on the books that I put on my TBR and whether or not I read them. And I boldly stated last month that I thought it would be a fun thing to include because it would be interesting to see whether I live up to the fact that in my mind, I think that I quite often read, I wouldn't say that I always read everything, but I get pretty close most months. Obviously, February did not go the way that I planned, and I had well more than 9 books on my TBR. So let's start off with the books that I had on my library TBR. So I had 4 books on my library TBR, and I only read one of them. I only read one library book this month, which is a concern. So I read Sad Cypress by Agatha Christie, but I did not get to Darkness Falls by Kate Tiernan, or The Giant Days Volume 10, or to Lady Helen and the Dark Day's Deceit by Alison Goodman. Didn't get to any of those. Then on my physical TBR, I technically had 6 books. I had the Casket Girls series. We now realize not a trilogy, but I had the first 3 books from that. So I had the Casket Girls, the Romeo Catchers, and the Cities of Dead. I read the first 2 in that series, and I was reading, well, I still am reading the 3rd book, but I have not completed it. So I read those 2, but I also did not get to Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or The Messenger by Marcus Zusak. I also did not get to the book that I pulled out of my TBR teacup, my beloved TBR teacup. I didn't get to Arisol and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. So I will be rolling my TBR teacup pick into March. I'm still going to pick one out in my March TBR, but I will be rolling that one in and trying to get both of them done in March. Moving on to my ebooks TBR. So I had 3 NetGalley books that I was hoping to get to. The first of those was Chosen by Kirsten White, which, as we've mentioned, I did read. However, I had 2 others that weren't technically published in February. They were being published very early in March, but I wanted to read them in February just to get ahead. That didn't happen. So I didn't get to Silent House or to Bad Bachelor. But I did get to my Kindle backlist book that I had on my TBR, to A Silent Child by Sarah A. Denzel, which was good because that was a rollover from my January TBR. So if I hadn't got to that in February, that would have been especially disappointing. And then my audiobook TBR, I also didn't get to most of these. I read Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane, but I didn't get to The Flight Attendant by Chris Bojan. I didn't write down the author's name. I didn't get to that one because I ran out of time, like in terms of that it was coming up to be expired, and so I managed to renew my borrowing of it, but in renewing it, I then had books that were due more urgently than that one. So I do still have that one to read, but I didn't get to it in February. And then similar with The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. It's another one that I just didn't get to in the month, and then I renewed it, and so I still have it to get to, but it fell a bit further down, kind of the audiobook queue, if you will. So that's how I did on my TBR. So what was the total of that? I read a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books of my TBR. Out of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Out of 17. That is definitely a fail by anyone's standards. Now moving on to some of my goals and how I did on a couple of my goals. So I'm doing the Around the Year in 52 Books challenge this year, as always, and I completed a total of 4 challenges, checked off 4 further challenges in February, which brings my total challenges completed to 19 out of the 52, so pretty happy with that. Now to move on to my goal for getting my TBR to below 400 by the end of the year. Last month I did really good and I reduced my TBR by 10. So my TBR total at the start of the month was 429. However, a number of books that I checked off my TBR that I read from my TBR this month was 0. That is an appalling statistic. but even though I did read The Casket Girls and The Romeo Catchers, which are these two books right here, but they were rereads. I had previously read those, so they didn't come off my TBR. And then I didn't get to anything else off my TBR. The one book from my TBR that I picked up, I didn't finish before the end of the month. So I checked off 0 books, and I acquired 9. Stay tuned to for my February book haul, because it was a much more successful book haul month than it was reading month. So my total TBR number went back up to 438, which means I have only reduced it by 1 so far in 2020. But hopefully I should get, there were kind of extenuating circumstances this month. Like it's so rare for me to get through nothing from my TBR in a month. And then in addition to that, I don't expect to have very many months where I get as many books as this in a month. It just kind of worked out that way this month, which I don't expect to be a common occurrence. So hopefully I can still keep on track with that goal. But that's it. That was my February reading month. Like I said, disappointing for me. I understand obviously that 9 books is still good. I am definitely, I guess I can kind of touch on my reading goal as well for my actual like Goodreads challenge reading goal. I am behind for the first time ever. And I kind of started to freak out when I was 1 book behind them. I think at the time of filming, I'm 5 books behind schedule. I have never, ever even been behind by a book, let alone 5. And I am freaking out slightly, but I know that once my reading goes back to like kind of its normal pace, hopefully in March, that I will catch back up on that. So, well, I should. So keep your fingers crossed for me. But yeah, that was my March reading month. That was my February reading month. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you've got any thoughts, or how you guys are going with your reading in February. My cats are doing zoomies. And yeah, please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.